what I would suggest is a tool called the 3-second rule, and this works 100% of the time. You just need to use it, and it's breaking the cycle of that habit.
Welcome to another episode of This Catholic Life. Conversations about life's ups and downs, big and small, how we deal with every situation imaginable, whatever life throws at us, but still manage to be sensible, practical, and joyful. Today's show is Life Hacks. The COVID lockdown sucks, and so we wanted to talk about some tips and tricks in working against the loneliness, the drudgery, and the sheer, not just boredom, but stress of being locked away. I'm your host, Peter Holmes, and today I'm joined again by Chantale. Thank you very much for coming and joining us again, Chantale.
A pleasure to be here. Thanks for inviting me on.
Excellent. You may remember, listeners, that we spoke to Chantale about addiction last time she was in, and she works with people overcoming addiction and their families and has some good insights into the kind of stresses that we're talking about today. So in Australia, the Delta variant of the COVID virus has Sydney in lockdown and will be for some time. Many other places in Australia are going to lockdown. So most of us are feeling pretty depressed. It's I have to say, it kind of feels a bit sad when we're looking at places like India and Papua New Guinea and places where they're suffering greatly from the Delta variant. And we're in nice, safe, cozy houses. And we're kind of thinking, well, are we being a bit ungrateful about lockdown? Is it okay to feel sad?
Definitely. We're human beings. We are made for connection. We are not made for isolation. And there's so much stuff that we can explain why this is the case. I'm just going to give you two reasons, though, that's come out in recent neuroscience. One is they've found a part of the brain that shows where our human rights being respected lives. And this is about freedom of expression, freedom of creativity, and freedom of movement. And whenever this is not being respected, there is psychological distress, there is psychological harm. So you're saying that when people get locked down, there's actually a part of our brain chemistry that comes against that, the neurological, stuff that reacts against this, that we feel like, oh, we're trapped. Yes, yeah, our brain is hurting. So
right.
This is very, very valid. And then there was recent research as well on people who were in lockdown and felt the social isolation, and it showed that there was a 30% of those people had reported changes in their cognition, memory, and problems with information processing.
So if you're sitting at home and you're thinking, gosh, I feel like my mind's coming apart, then it's actually literally happening. Not in the sense of a disastrous collapse of things, but there is a deterioration.
Yeah, it's hurting a bit. It's not falling apart, but it's hurting a bit. So we're not going to be operating at a peak, and we're not going to be feeling great either. So this is happening. This is how we are wired. And to counter this, we have to be really intentional and purposeful to understand our bodies and do things to counter this, basically.
Yeah, because we're not running at the full capacity that we were running when everything was normal and everything around us is good and we had all the connections that we had before. All right, so there's big things and small things. Now, there's a couple of big things that people deal with, like the lockdowns. I have to say that my own family, we were looking forward very much to a wedding, and it looks like that's in the middle of lockdown. And so, even if it goes ahead, it'll be a very small wedding, and that hurts. But there are small things too. I mean, not being able to go to the cafe, just to get a coffee, that sucks.
Yeah, definitely.
So let's talk about understanding that problem first, and then once we've talked about understanding, we can talk about what to do about it. So how do we come to understand ourselves and the effect these things have on us, and what help will that be?
One thing that I believe is really, really helpful is understanding how your body works. So not being able to go to the coffee shop and me feeling sad or frustrated or upset with that. As humans, I'm going to do a tiny bit of psych ed here. We have autonomic nervous systems, and that branches into two parts. One is called your sympathetic, the other is called your parasympathetic. The sympathetic is where we're feeling frustrated, not being able to go to that coffee shop. And it is our fight or flight response. It's where we feel stressed. It's where we feel fear, we feel unsafe. And this is very normal to be switched on while we're in lockdown, because we're not in social engagement, we're not connecting with others, and we are, as I said earlier, we're mammals, we are wired for connection.
So when you said the fight or flight thing, does that mean that, like, when someone says you can't go to the coffee shop and I go, That's a fairly normal response.
It's a very normal response.
That explains a lot of stuff that's been going on social media. Honestly, there's a lot of anger coming out in people's responses. And I see two people who I know like each other very much, and they're coming at each other hard about some stupid issue. It's just the anger, the kind of fight or flight stuff going on.
Yes, it's a survival response. That's our animal nature coming out. It's very normal. And when we understand that, we also don't vilify others, and we don't vilify ourselves when we see that. We understand ourselves. We have compassion for ourselves.
Right.
And we go, okay, this is my animal body reacting in this way. Now what can I do to calm it down and put it into my parasympathetic nervous system, where it's my my human wise self that can actually observe rather than my animal self.
It's being aware of where it's going, and then being able to direct it. All right, well, that comes to being intentional. So if we're going to be intentional about responding to this, if we know this is an issue, then we need to actually plan for it, don't we?
Yes, yes.
So what kind of plans can we make?
In terms of our plans, we can look at what we do on the daily. So how do we structure our day? And we can put in that day some hacks, I guess, to switch on that parasympathetic nervous system on purpose to calm your body down. Then we can also look at the routine and what we do, and then we can also look at connection, and we can go deeper into each one of those.
Right. So when you said hacks to sort of get the parasympathetic going, let's go into a couple of those. Can you give us 2 or 3 of those?
Of course I can. One of my favorite hacks to get you into calm, parasympathetic, where you feel relaxed and you don't want to bite the head off to your husband or your wife or your kids. Where whatever they do, you just feel relaxed. Things aren't as irritating or aggravating. This is called diaphragmatic breathing. This is a technique that has shown if you do this consistently every day for 15 minutes, you can't get into snappy head. You will always be relaxed. And this is
That's
really
a big promise, Chantale.
I've had so many clients and friends that have tried this, and they fall asleep right towards the end of it, and they wake up a few hours later going, what the heck just happened? That's how calming this is. It's
okay. Well, hit us with it.
Okay, diaphragmatic breathing. If you've never done this before, the best way to start is actually lying flat on your back on the ground or on your bed. You put a hand on your chest and you put the other hand on your stomach. And the goal here is you don't want your chest to move. You actually want your belly to go up and down. So you imagine that there's a balloon inside your core and you're expanding the balloon. So your tummy expands, your spine pushes out of the back. It's just inflating the area around your diaphragm. What I suggest everyone does, this is what I do, is I put a timer on my phone. You put it on 15 minutes and I watch the seconds count down. That helps me keep track of the time. And imagine it's like a triangular shape of breathing. You're breathing in for 5 seconds. You're then holding your breath for 5 seconds. And you're then breathing out for 5 seconds. So it's in for 5, hold for 5, out for 5. And as you breathe in, you want your tummy to expand. You're then just holding your breath for 5 seconds, and then you're exhaling for 5 seconds. And I just watch the 5 seconds go down on the timer on my phone as I go through until it reaches a 0.
And you just do that for 15 minutes?
Do 15 minutes. You can do this at night. You can do this in the morning.
That sounds a little too easy.
Brilliant.
I'm guessing they can't sell it. That's why they don't tell us about it. All right. So that sounds pretty basic. What about another tip?
Oh, this is a fun one. This is fake yawning. Fake yawning. So we're not going to waste time to get the science behind it. I'll just tell you how to actually do it. Fake yawn. Oh. And just keep doing it. Do around 10 in a row and notice how your body feels. So for anyone listening right now, we can do 3 fake yawns in a row. Want to do it with me, Peter?
Okay.
Let's go.
I think I'm a bit tired, so I'm really getting into this.
How's your body feel, Peter?
Actually, I feel like going to bed. I'm a bit. It does.
Calm your body down.
Can I ask you a question at this point? We had a show some time ago, about a year ago now, on laughter, and scientists had proved that even faking laughter can actually affect you. And so they had these fake laughter clinics, which I think, why not just put on some comedy and actually laugh? But they were saying that even faking laughing fools your body into reacting chemically. Is that true?
Yes, and the same with fake smiling.
Really?
Smile, because it's switching on the neural pathways that usually do that. So the same reaction will happen.
There you go. There you go. All right, we've got 2 down. Have we got time for one more?
course. Oh, this is an interesting one. This is called Virgins, not Virgins. Virgins. Yeah, GNC. And this was found by accident by an ophthalmologist, an eye doctor.
Right.
And I won't tell the backstory for timeliness, but the way that you do Virgins is put your finger, so just stick your finger up and look at your finger. You're just staring at your finger and stare at your finger for about 4 seconds. So 1, 2, 3, 4. Now I'm going to look at directly what's behind my finger. And for me is a wall that's probably about 1 meter away.
Yep.
And I'm going to stare at that spot for about 4 seconds. 1, 2, 3, 4. That's a very quick 4 seconds. And I'm going to go back to my finger again. 1, 2, 3, 4.
So it's just altering your focus as you go through.
Yeah, so your eyeball's adjusting from close to far, but the same position. So it's the same spot, but it's going close to far.
Right.
That is a little hack to switch on your parasympathetic nervous too. But do that for a minimum of 5 minutes. You can do 5 to
5 minutes. That's something my optometrist told me to do a long time ago when I started using computers. I have glasses now because I didn't listen to him. But
funny, it was an
I listened.
And then we found to give the explanation, because they didn't do that to calm you down. That was just an eye test. But the ophthalmologist noticed that the patient's heart rate started to drop a lot while they were doing the eye test. And that's how
right. That's really good. I'll have to try it. All right. So in terms of those, they're just simple physical things we can do to calm ourselves down in certain situations. And you've promised us that if we do the breathing one, we can't get into angry face really quickly. So I'm going to hold you to that. But what about connection? I mean, we talked about connection there. We talked about we're communal animals. We enjoy each other's company, even if we're introverts. Some of us are in houses, and it gets a little hard to live with the people we're with if you're there all the time. And others of us are by ourselves, and we don't have anyone to mix with.
Yes. So for those that have family, have loved ones with them, they're not on their own. If we're using the parasympathetic hacks, that's going to help us be able to tolerate each other.
That's good. Yes. Make the best of each other's company, Chef, perhaps.
So that's a start where we're in our parasympathetic, we're calm. And then what really helps is physical touch. So if you can increase cuddles, if you can increase affection, that's really, really helpful.
Even something as simple as a fist bump or, high five or something could be good.
Anything, any form of physical touch. So even hand holding, fist pumps, hugs, cuddles, anything. So that's for those that have others around them. Now, for those who are at home by themselves, but not just that, also for those with their families to do this as well, because it's also important to connect externally. But at the moment, we can only do this virtually. So it's using what is within our means. So being really intentional with scheduling virtual activities. And it doesn't need to be, the meetings that we're all used to doing online now. It can be fun stuff. So we can look at, let's do games night. I did this with my siblings a few weeks ago. And it was via Zoom. We did a games night.
I was joking with some friends, Chantale, about the fact that Zoom has kept me in the human interaction that I don't enjoy, that is meetings, but it's cut out the interaction that I do enjoy, which is games and fun and mucking around and just having. And so I started scheduling drink dates. So I would have a coffee with a mate of 11 o'clock on a particular day. Like we'd just make a date and we'd hang out and just drink coffee together and talk and then nick off after half an hour.
Yes, I do that too. They're coffee and tea Zoom dates.
There you go. So probably my title wasn't as good as yours, but drink dates carries another connotation, doesn't it? All right. So the virtual connections are not just about chatting to people. Probably helps us a little bit to think outside the box a little bit, not just think about ourselves. Because if we're locked in a house, we're constantly focusing on our own situation. Whereas, wouldn't it help us if we were focused outside ourselves, perhaps on some other cause or someone else's worries or something?
Yeah, definitely. So engaging in acts of service in whichever way you could engage in acts of service. And the smallest would be connection for another person as well, because we're all in this together and we all do need to connect. So if it's something that you wouldn't usually bring you that much joy, but it brings another person a lot of joy, perhaps getting involved in that. So
yeah.
It's thinking, what brings this other person joy?
I have to say, we had a dear friend say, I can't do anything for you. It's really frustrating. I know it's a rotten time. Can I buy you guys dinner? And then use Menulog to send us dinner. And it was the biggest deal because the kids got takeaway and it was amazing and we're really appreciative, and they got a kick out of it because the kids were appreciative. And it was a big deal. And it was just that little bit of connection, I mean, we could have got Menulog ourselves, but it was just a really good thing to do for someone else.
Yes, I used to do that with a friend when we would be on other sides of the world and just randomly send like Uber Eats or delivery. That's
a good thing. That's a good thing.
Good fun.
So the other thing is that because I have Zoom meetings regularly and because that's my only interaction while I'm working from home, there's a temptation. I think I used to read Dilbert comics. I don't know if you ever saw Dilbert comics, but there was a temptation he talks about in the comic book of if you're on video chat only, you feel like you only need to get dressed and comb your hair from the waist up, kind of thing, and the rest of it's. But in fact, I've had some of my students actually record like 10 minutes of themselves sitting there on the thing and loop it so that they think they're getting away with it, but they're just looping themselves on the cam to not even make an effort. There is a temptation to not make an effort. However, I've found when I get up, have a shower, get myself all dressed up for work as if I'm going, it makes a difference to my attitude in terms of my work.
Definitely. I love that you brought that up. It takes a bit of effort, but if we don't, we're going to shut down. We go into hibernation. What messages are you telling your body? It's going to get to winter and I'm going to cave in and not speak to anyone for the next 3 months. We need to do this. Comes back to intentionality and being purposeful and saying act as if I'm actually going into a meeting, even though I'm at home, or I might be doing this from a desk in my bedroom. Even it's do whatever we can to replicate everyday life.
How much of this is just being aware constantly of how things are affecting us? So, for example, I know that when I get a haircut, I feel better. And even though it's a dodgy haircut because I've got my own clippers in my own house and I'm losing my hair, it makes me feel better. Done. I'm doing lots of that. Or when I have cheese, I feel awesome. Disproportionately for cheese. It shouldn't be that awesome, but I feel awesome. So the whole being aware of myself, I mean, I used to think that shouldn't feel that good, but actually there's a plus to knowing what buttons to press to make me slightly happier. And if it's an easy one, go for it.
Yes, 100%. And that's in your self-care. And what does light you up and what keeps you in a flow. So it's having that attitude of gentleness with yourself at the same time. I'm going to do what does give me joy, but keeps me healthy at the same time.
Cool.
Quick note on the cheese. Do you know why you like it?
Well, the cheese is, I mean, now we're getting into science again, but they have demonstrated that there's a small amount of dopamine release when you have cheese, a very small amount. So the same happy drug that happens in terms of the sexual releases or in terms of, hard drugs or something like that, you get a tiny amount in cheese. So you're actually, it's a drug habit. Probably a good time to talk about, we've talked about all the positive ways that we can deal with lockdown. I want to talk very briefly about a very minor problem that I had with caffeine. Because I drink coffees usually at work only when I think, gosh, I need a coffee. At home, I'm so bored, I caught myself drinking a lot more of it, and caffeine itself became a problem, which causes all kinds of other problems. And I'm fighting back against that. But there is, of course, the danger of reverting to, because we get into habits if we're at home and no one's watching us and there's not a social regulation of bad habits such as alcohol or other things.
Yeah, definitely. We can revert because we're vulnerable. We're not at our best and we're vulnerable. On the caffeine, there's also another element to that as well, where it can create more anxiety. So it puts us more into a state of fight or flight. So it's really counterproductive. And also in terms of habits, what we're seeing, the increase in, I don't even know where to get started, but if we're just going to stick with alcohol, just with drinking, it's skyrocketing. We're looking at people that are drinking to really unhealthy levels.
Yeah, it's probably a bit more dangerous than some others, at least initially, because if you're taking cocaine, if you're shooting up heroin. But with alcohol, it's a normal social habit, and so watching what you're drinking is a much more, it's easier to slip by you until it becomes a problem.
Definitely. And on the other note of that, alcohol's a depressant. So it's actually going to aggravate the depression that you're feeling in lockdown. It doesn't take it away. It may anesthetize you briefly, but then it magnifies it when you wake up.
That's right. Yeah. There's a kind of a way of saying, don't do this, don't do that, but it doesn't help us when we're looking for some kind of out. Because often people who choose these things, when I was drinking coffee, I wasn't going, I really need coffee. I was saying, I'm so bored, anything will do, anything. So replacing it with better habits, replacing it with stronger things or good things, snacks, whatever, or exercise or something that's good might be a way through it. Do you have any advice for people who find themselves perhaps slipping into a bad habit, or they might be concerned about it?
Yeah, definitely. And it depends on the strength of that habit and how long they've been going for, with how strongly you need to counter that. So for somebody that finds that they've tried to actually stop and they keep falling back into it, what I would suggest is a tool called the 3-second rule. And this works 100% of the time. You just need to use it. And it's breaking the cycle of that habit. And so the very first second, number one, is stop. You stop the thought. So if the thought is, I wouldn't mind a beer right now, I wouldn't mind a glass of wine, or I wouldn't mind a cup of coffee, whatever the thing is coming up, or if someone's gambling and they're going, I wonder, what race to bet on, or whatever it might be. As soon as you see the thought, because it starts with that thought, you immediately stop the thought. Just go stop in the very first second. But then in the second second, you have to distract yourself. This is a non-negotiable. If you don't distract yourself, that thought will keep bombarding you until you end up.
So you've got to have something ready to go, really.
You have to distract. And one of the most powerful forms of distraction is connection. So call a friend, call someone, just have a chat, go for a walk, get outside. You need some form of physical distraction, either a conversation with another human being, or you get up and stretch your legs and go for a walk, leave your phone at home. Distraction. And then the third second, this is actually the most important for neurological reasons with rewiring your brain. It can also feel the most uncomfortable, and it can feel like you're lying to yourself. And I won't get into the science of why right now. And this is called affirm. This is where you affirm yourself. You give yourself a pat on the back. You say, I'm doing awesome. I did great. So I'm stopping the thought. I'm distracting myself. I'm giving myself a pat on the back.
Right.
3-second rule. It works.
3 seconds.
Yeah, in 3 seconds.
Wow. So we've got heaps of life hacks today. If someone's saying, hey, I'd like some more of this sort of thing. By the way, I've been watching Chantale on LinkedIn. And do you do Facebook as well?
I do Facebook.
Okay, I've been watching on LinkedIn throw out some of these life hacks, which is why I reached out to her again. But you can catch her there on LinkedIn, and we'll put the link in our show notes. But also you can reach out to you if there's someone who wants to. You better spruik your services.
Or you can reach out to me on LinkedIn. You can which the link will be there. And you can reach out to me on Facebook or Instagram. I think Facebook, it's Chantale Marie Recovery. Instagram, it's Chantale Addiction Specialist, but they're hard to spell, so just look them up in the bio and reach out. You get PM and I can give you a call.
Fantastic. Thank you very much for coming on. It's a difficult subject, but you make it fun to talk about, and also lots of positive tips on how to go from here. So that's it for this week's podcast. If today's discussion got you thinking or arguing with us, or you've got better tips, then hit us up. Hit us up on Facebook, Instagram, Discord, or Twitter. And write us a review on iTunes. Tell your friends. This is a uniquely Australian Catholic podcast, and we think that's an idea worth getting behind. That's all for now. Thank you for listening to This Catholic Life.